Okay, so it's official embargo lift day for the RTX 4060, and let me tell you right now, I'm really starting to hate graphics card reviews. EK Waterblock's Nucleus series AIOs are a closed loop and maintenance-free way to keep your CPU nice and cool for maximum performance. Compatible with the latest Intel and AMD CPUs, the Nucleus AIO comes in both the Luxe Edition featuring ARGB lighting, as well as a dark version for a clean, light-free aesthetic and an ultra-clean look. Daisy chain fans allow for a super easy install, while the thicker cold plate provides an improved cooling experience versus the competitors. To see the full list of specs and sizes, follow the sponsored link in the description below. Okay, so just to address a couple of things on that teaser. Holy cow, did I underestimate how much people would hate us just giving you some early information regarding a title that we already use. I just need to set some things straight here, like first and foremost. The only thing NVIDIA told me I couldn't do, which run 1440p, which I think was kind of stupid considering the fact the card actually performs decent in 1440p. Regarding all those settings and stuff that I toggled and turned on, I did all of that. So, I mean, whatever. I guess whatever imaginary paycheck you guys think I got for that, clearly bought a house or something. I wish that were the case, but it's not. But you know what? For those of you that are still here and appreciated the fact that all I was trying to do is give you some early information to maybe make a buying decision on, was not intended to be a part of some NVIDIA marketing conglomerate. But if anything, I should have learned from the past, because I remember when Linus did the 8K gaming thing for the RTX 3090 and realized what a fiasco that was. But anyway, lessons learned. I even had a conversation with NVIDIA today saying this was all a bad idea. And I don't mean like working with us in terms of doing, well, yeah, maybe working with us was a bad idea. But doing early teaser stuff never goes well, and it even went very poorly for AMD back in the day. So with all that said, if you're still here, I'm gonna go ahead and give you some too long didn't read right up front. My recommendation, having now tested the $230 to $299 range, and then put the 4060 Ti in there just because it's the next tier up from the 4060 in terms of NVIDIA's product stack offering, buy the 6700 XT. Like there it is right there. Because what you're gonna see in these charts moving forward is the 6700 XT and its recent price drop from AMD across the board puts it at a very significant contender at the same price of the RTX 4060 and even better than it in many titles. And it's not NVIDIA if you don't wanna support NVIDIA. So there is that. But anyway, moving on, let's go ahead and get into the benchmarks here. The fun thing about this whole mid-range shootout is the fact that we actually have 3 contenders. Intel's Arc series, the A750 Limited is what we use for Intel, because the A770, I guess there's just shortages on that card for some reason, and the prices are really ridiculous, like over $700 on Amazon, which is really odd. But the A750 you can still get for 230 bucks? Something like, I have all the pricing in here, and we're gonna say pricing to the end when you see exactly how all these cards shape up with not launch pricing, but today pricing. And I think that's one major thing I'm gonna change when it comes to doing some of these comparisons. Comparing launch pricing means nothing, because as new products come out, prices usually adjust. So we compared prices to today on Amazon US and either Newegg or Amazon. I don't use Micro Center, their pricing's far too low and their availability is far too limited for people that don't live within driving distance of one, because you can't buy online anyway. So with all that said, 4060 Ti, just because it's the top 60 series that you can see how far behind it is. A750, RX 6700 XT, the founders, the OEM card, the 4060 Dual, which is the Asus card that was sent to us by NVIDIA. I even said this in the video, and a lot of people were like, I thought you quit Asus, you big liar. It's like, I didn't ask for this card, I wanted the MSI. They sent me this. Anyway, the RX 7600, which is the mid-tier offering for the current generation for AMD. The RTX 3060 Tough, which is obviously the previous 60 series card. 2060 Super, and the reason why I chose the Super rather than going with the 2060 non-Super is, if you recall, when NVIDIA turned TSMC back on to start making 2060 again when 30 series was so hard to get, it was actually the Super cards that they made. And I think that's just because of the fact that there was a little extra performance there, cost them no more to make, and they were able to make money on those. And the 6600 XT Merc, which is, again, right around that price range. Now, the pricing stack between 200 bucks and 300 bucks is extremely crowded. There's a ton of cards spanning multiple generations. Like, the stupid thing is the fact that you could spend just as much right now on a 2060 Super on Amazon as you would for the 6700 XT. Like, that's just stupid. And no wonder why people are super confused. But anyway, starting off with Port Royal, which is just an RT test. It's a synthetic. It is designed to make small differences look larger on charts, but it is a test nonetheless. So as you can see right here, ironically, the A750 dominated that one. Now remember, Intel recently got some major driver improvements that showed across the board improvements on their A700 series graphics cards. So the A750 started performing like an A770, and the A770 started performing like an A780, which doesn't even exist. In fact, their little star asterisk was like up to 30% performance gain in certain titles. What that really means is one title gave 30%, everything else might have been like 15 to 20, but whatever. Percent is percent, and it didn't cost you anything. But the 6700 XT, which I don't even have one on here, I have the 7600 right here, was our winner in Port Royal. Which is funny because remember, AMD is on a previous gen RT, but it's just the 6700 XT's price drop is why it's even in this chart, which means now you got an upper tier card like the 6700 XT for previous, it's a 4060, no one cares. 6700 XT previous gen AMD card, now performing in a price point that makes it compelling even though it's previous gen. And it's not NVIDIA and it's not Intel. So people can buy that and be happy about it. But if you look at the stack, it pretty much has a pretty linear chart to it. 2060 slower, barely, by like 20 points than the 3060 tough. Remember the Super is higher than a 60. So if I had a 2060, it'd be a bigger gap, but the 2060 Super is what you can buy today at the near same price point. The 7600, this little bitty guy right here, definitely holding its own in RT. But if you move on to TimeSpy Extreme, which is a rasterization test, the 4060 Ti is barely edging out the A750 Limited from Intel. This is starting to feel like an Intel review, to be honest again. No, but it's like the card series that keeps on giving. Right behind that, again, the 6700 XT. Again, these are synthetics. They're designed to really utilize the engine and the core architecture perfectly, and then make little gaps look way bigger on charts. But anyway, the 4060 Dual coming in like right in the middle, right behind the 7600, like literally 30, not even 30 points behind it. So when we're talking about real games though, not synthetics, we're gonna start with Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3 is a heavily AMD optimized title, but no one ever gets mad about that. People only get mad if anything is even somewhat skewed towards NVIDIA. So I use Borderlands 3 because it's a balanced system. Some titles will favor NVIDIA, some titles will favor AMD. This one is heavily AMD favored at 6700 XT, giving us 1080p performance at 135 FPS. Oh, and yes, by the way, my 4060 in this particular charts, like I said, are running 1440p because I think a $300 card better be able to run 1440p. And I said that in my video about the teaser. I should have pushed back harder and told NVIDIA, no, we're gonna do 1440p. But anyway, moving on, 93 FPS in 1440p for the 6700 XT. If we look at the 4060 Dual, it's literally right in the middle again. 95 FPS 1080p, 67 FPS 1440p, maxed settings. Those are the badass settings. Remember how they have like interesting names for the settings? Those are badass settings. So why on earth NVIDIA would have wanted to hide the 67 FPS in 1440 is beyond me. But maybe it's because the 6600 XT Merc is 107 FPS versus 95? And 73 in 1440 versus 67? Again, heavily AMD optimized title. I could just stop it right there and be like, AMD is the best, but we can't do that because obviously the titles simply tell the bigger story as you move on. And the 2060 Super, if anything, it shows if you're, and you'll see as these charts go on, if you're on the 2060 Super, any card on this chart is an upgrade, okay? The thing is, if you had to pay full price for it, it probably wouldn't be worth going from a 2060 to a 3060 or even a 4060. You would have to get like most of your money back for your card to make it worth it. Cyberpunk 2077, RT on. Here comes all the shill comments once again. Our RT settings are always set to high or ultra. Actually, no, our settings are not set to ultra. We do ray tracing high because of the fact that I feel like ultra is more performance hit without as much visible eye candy. So I feel like that's a terrible setting. I turned on Ultra in our teaser because I wanted to see what is the worst possible performance you could get out of a 4060, but all that turned into was the worst possible teaser you could do as a YouTuber. So moving on, because of Cyberpunk definitely is good at utilizing DLSS and DLSS 3.0. These are non-frame gen, by the way. We do not turn on frame gen in our tests because of the increased latency and the fake frames. So fake frames and smoother FPS for increased latency in terms of input latency is not something that I'm personally interested in. So none of these tests include frame gen. RT on is also no DLSS. So I need to point that out. This is RT on, no other upscaling, downscaling features. This is just raw performance with RT cores doing all of the calculation. 4060 Ti, of course, at the top, 4060 Dual right behind it. Again, this is because of the fact that we are on 3rd gen RT cores for NVIDIA and 2nd gen RT cores for AMD. So it goes 4060 Ti, 4060 Dual, 3060 Tough, then A750. Just still not terrible, although you can tell there's no upscaling happening because we're talking like the best card on here in 1080p is getting 45 FPS, which is absolutely like terrible. Nobody would ever want to play that way. The 2060 Super is down to 24, and then the A750 is getting 28 and 13. So again, these numbers right here are awful. And this is why I use Cyberpunk, because of the fact that the game, without any of the upscaling technologies turned on, no XeSS, which would give Intel obviously optimized boost there, no FSR, which would give AMD a boost, and no DLSS, which would obviously give Intel a boost. This is just core for core performance numbers right here. Moving on to no RT, you can see that those numbers jump up significantly. And that's just because Cyberpunk, and that was not with the full path tracing either, that was implemented into the game. That's a whole different setting. That's off because turning that on would probably cut those numbers in half again. If you take a look at the numbers though, again, the 6700 XT is right behind the 4060 and it's $100 less. Well, just about $100 less, about like $85 less. So you guys will see the prices I figured out here. And then right behind that, the 7600, then the 4060 Dual. So again, that optimized NVIDIA shilling stuff, as you can see, AMD, and this is my fault. This is my fault. You know why? Because when I told NVIDIA I'm going to compare our teaser against AMD cards, and guess what I didn't do? I didn't compare it against AMD cards. So the absence of AMD in that teaser definitely made it look like some sort of an advertisement. And I intended to do it this way, but that was a video created in haste, and that's my bad. But the A750 is getting 78 FPS in ultra settings. These are all ultra settings, just no RT. Just ray tracing off, which I think a lot of people still tend to do just for the performance hit, which I think you should do in a mid-range card, especially with a game like Cyberpunk. 78 versus 54. Now you can see right there though why they didn't want 1440p on in this test. It's 47 FPS and 1440p for 4060. In fact, it had almost the lowest 1440p numbers. So that goes to show, even though it's an 8GB card with the higher L3 cache, it doesn't help in this instance because it's still obviously having plenty of misses, which means it's going to VRAM, and obviously less VRAM holds less data, and that's gonna affect your FPS. So there you go. Moving on, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, another older title that really allows the cards to sort of ramp up to see what their max FPS can look like. I mean, we're talking 6700 XT is 165 FPS in 1080. Again, that's another AMD title, by the way. Shadow of the Tomb Raider is an AMD somewhat biased title, even though it has DLSS in it, which is kind of interesting. 113 FPS for 1440. You can see the 4060 here is right under the 6700 XT, but still a pretty big drop from 165 to 152 in 1080 and 113 down to 97 in 1440. Again, highest settings. They call it highest in this game. Let's go ahead and turn RT on, which is just shadows, by the way. And Shadow of the Tomb Raiders, shadow ray tracing, drops things, quite a bit, but still, again, the 6700 XT right on the heels of the 4060 Ti, and that's a $100 more card versus the 4060 non-Ti. Let's move forward now to Guardians of the Galaxy no RT. The 4060 Ti is almost hitting the FPS cap, but 6700 XT, again, right behind it at 156 FPS for 1080, 113 for 1440, 4060, again, right behind that. And you'll see these numbers really do, kind of keep most of their particular ordering. Sometimes they reorder a little bit, but they almost stay in the same hierarchy in most of this. In fact, this is where I need you guys to give me a little bit of feedback. I'm debating on these charts, instead of having them reorder fastest to slowest, having everything maintain its spot and then you see the charts move. I personally like when they order highest to lowest, but the thing is you'll have to stop and then kind of adjust your indexing of your vision as to what cards are on the left. I think maybe we should start leaving them in one spot and having the bars just move. Sound off down below which one you think is gonna be better for you to review, to absorb the information. But if you look at Guardians with no RT, look how cluttered the bottom half of this chart is. Between the A750, the 6600 XT, the 7600, the 2060 Super, and the 3060 Tough is a difference of 10 FPS. And then if we look at 1440p, 9181, 9188. And then I can't actually see what we're getting for there in 90. So it's 9189, 91, 88, 90. Literally, like those 5 cards are like identical in the performance there. Turn on RT though, and then everything kind of like whoop stretches out. And that, again, you have 1st gen RT for Intel, 2nd gen RT for AMD, and 3rd gen RT for NVIDIA, and then that's exactly how that stack goes. No surprise there. I still don't think RT should be something you base your buying decisions on, especially in this price point, because of the fact that performance hit is not worth the eye candy unless you're taking screenshots all day, which I don't know anyone that actually does that. Gears of War 5, pretty stretched out title. It's interesting though, if you take a look at the 2060 Super, it performs pretty admirably in 1440p versus the 6600, the A750, and the 7600. And that's just simply because of the fact that it has more VRAM. But Gears of War, it's pretty, I mean, the charts are kind of linear in this sense, except for the 2060 Super. Ironically, it's getting decent FPS in 1440p, faster than the 6600 XT, faster than the A750 by quite a bit, and just barely slower than the 7600. And then moving on to Forza Horizon 5. Again, 4060 Ti at the top should be its most expensive card. It should be at the top on every test, which it is. That card aside, the 6700 XT, once again, at the top. You can see why I said the too long didn't read, too long didn't watch version at the beginning of this video. I'm like 6700 XT should be our recommendation when it comes to the price point in this particular card. There's plenty of them new on the market. These charts definitely speak for themselves, because if we turn on RT with Metro Exodus, you can see things spread out. And then ironically, again, the A750 Limited just punching above its weight class going, what the hell guys, don't forget about me, because those Intel devs and those engineers are definitely hard at work. You know they're not stopping with the A770. I'm excited to see what their future looks like. But you've got a pretty big spread between 1440p and the 2060 Super at 39 and the 4060 Ti at 64. But again, the prices are much closer together than these FPS spreads are, which means it starts to become harder to make a GPU decision in that price point, because they definitely are like doing this with each other, and then they're all around the same price point. Be Quiet is proud to announce their all-new white Lightwings high-performance ARGB fans, available in 120 and 140 millimeter sizes. All fans are PWM and available in either a 7-blade or a 9-blade high-performance model. Lightwings fans feature ARGB lighting on both the front and the back, allowing for a customized appearance no matter which way the fan is facing. Available in either a single fan or a triple pack with a fan hub included, the new white Lightwings fans from Be Quiet are an obvious choice for PC enthusiasts who demand performance and silent operation. To see the full list of specs and availability, follow the link in the description below. Speaking of price, this is what the pricing looks like. $399 for the 4060 Ti FE 8GB and 4060 Dual at $299, 6700 XT at $299. Now what I said about these prices are what I found them for right now, about an hour before making this video, seeing what current availability on brand new cards are. If you're willing to buy used, you're gonna get an even better deal than this. $299 for the 4060 Dual versus $299 for the 6700 XT. And here's the crazy part. You can get a 6750 XT, which gives you even a little bit more performance bump for about $25 to $29 more. So now you're talking like $329 or so to get a 6750 XT, which gets you more performance boost than that percentage extra in cost. So realistically, the 6700 XT, I chose it because it's like right at that price point. But if you got a little bit extra money to spend, 6750 XT, definitely worth it. Same thing goes for the 6600 XT and the 6650 XT. Do you remember the 50 series, 6650, 6750, 6950? Those came out as like mid-generation cards for the 6000 series, where they had better yields and they were able to push the cards farther and get more performance out of them, and they kept them at roughly the same price, just a little bit bumped. But AMD has recently dropped prices on cards. They made it to retailers and e-tailers very quickly in time for this review, which is why you're seeing the 6700 XT coming in at $299. Now here's the crazy part, a 3060 Tough, and yes, the 3060s do have 12 gigabytes of VRAM, and some of these tests showed on 4060, you still can run out of cache, which means 8 gigabytes at the same price. That's why people were very upset. Like, give us the 12 gigs.
And NVIDIA is really leaning into the whole, let's make the cache larger thing so the buffer pool won't matter as much, but you still have to feed the cache from your buffer pool and vice versa. They have to communicate, like all misses have to go to the VRAM. And guaranteed with titles what they are today, even in 1080p, you can easily start to run out of video buffer. And that's the real root reason why they don't want 1440p tested with these cards. Like even in the the benchmark guidelines and stuff, which for the most part we don't utilize from NVIDIA, they all talk about this being a 1080p card, 1080p, 1080p, 1080p. I think it can perform fine in 1440p if you're willing to make caveats in certain, or concessions in certain settings. But the 8 gigs in 1440 will definitely find situations where it's running out of cache anyway. But the 3060, like I started to say, $289 still. So for $10 more, I'd rather have the 4060. Sure, I'm still stuck at 8 gigabytes, but you have a faster card. But that's only if you're not willing to consider the 6700 XT. I would still take that card over the 3060 for sure, and over the 4060. Because that's exactly what AMD did. They gave you 12 gigs on the 6700 XT, and that's definitely helping it, I think, in its case here. The 7600 at $269, I feel like I'd rather spend the extra money and get the 6700 XT versus the 7600 XT. Again, newer version card, their next generation RT cores and stuff, but at this price point, I don't think RT should be your buying influence at all. And I would take the 6700 XT with 12 gigs of VRAM over the 7600 all day long. The A750 though, you saw how well it was performing. It's really high on some of the charts and towards the bottom of others, but it's $240. $240. That's really hard to scoff at. Anyway, and then the 6600 Merc at $229. Clearly the cheapest card, but also definitely had the biggest ups and downs outside of the Intel card in terms of how the particular titles hit it. So that's the thing, is if you take a look at the price spacing, the 6700 XT definitely looks like the biggest value right now. And those cards aren't gonna be available forever. They are previous gen, they're not making them anymore. There's still a surplus, but that's not gonna last forever. So if you're watching this video and you're leaning towards a card and you are agnostic, you don't care about if it's AMD, Intel, or NVIDIA, it's really hard not to recommend and say go buy the 6700 XT. If you're an NVIDIA fanboy and you're charging at 300, or you're looking at $300, you're gonna spend it on the 4060 anyway, or maybe a previous gen card. Like you could definitely get yourself like a 3070 for that price. And then that'd be a better card than a 4060. The gap between 4060 dual, or not the dual, but just 4060 and the 4060 Ti, both price and performance wise, just makes no sense. I don't know why NVIDIA could have made this card faster and kept the price where it is. They could have given it more VRAM and kept the price where it is, but this is just their business model currently. Anyway, there we go. Take the information for what it is, watch all your other favorite reviewers. You're gonna find a lot of contrasting ways of doing testing, and you can take your time. These cards aren't selling out. No one's running out to buy cards these days. So if you stuck around this long, kudos to you. Thank you for watching. We appreciate all of you guys. I need your feedback though on the charts. Do you want the cards to stay in their spot and then their bars just move? That way you can easily see like, oh, these two cards, how they compared, rather than reordering them top to bottom. I think that's what you guys are gonna lean towards, but I wanna hear it and confirm it with you guys. Anyway, thanks for watching. And as always, we'll see you in the next one.